I'm going to go ahead and get started. I think we have a couple of staff having a hard time getting on, but I'm hoping that we'll get that fixed here pretty soon. So everybody, I just want to welcome you all to our first virtual CASA info session. And my name is Natalie Cubbage. I'm the Interim Executive Director here at CASA of the Heartland. So I want to thank you all for joining in such an uncertain time. I know it's been difficult, and we've tried to move around our sessions and our training to kind of accommodate the virtual sessions that we're having to utilize now to communicate with everyone. So thank you all again for joining us today. This session will be recorded. I haven't currently recording right now. So if for some reason you had to leave early, or you know someone that may be interested in learning more about CASA, I'm hoping to have this recording set up on our website and our social media. And if it's helpful, I may also send this out in a link so that you all are able to access that. Just before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone. It looks like we have 11 people on today. So just to eliminate the background noise, I'm going to mute everyone. But a little bit later on, we're going to have a Q&A session. And there are a couple of ways that you can interact with us. Some of you have already seen it, but there is a chat box that you can use. Feel free at any time during the session if you want to ask a question or make a comment. Please feel free to use that chat box. We have some current volunteers on today, and also some that have probably already met with us to attend the next training, and then some that may be just interested in learning more about CASA and what we do. So feel free to use that chat box. And to find that, if you are on a computer, if you hover towards the bottom of your screen, there will be a black bar that appears. One of those buttons is the chat box. And there's also something called reactions or a raise hand button. It may be different for each of you all. But if you have the reactions button, there's something called clap hands or thumbs up. So when we get to the Q&A portion of the session and you would like to ask a question using your microphone, I will unmute you if you hit one of those buttons. So we will go ahead and get into the session and kind of talk about our agenda for today. So first, we're going to talk about what CASA is, what CASA stands for. We're going to talk about how it was started, our local mission and vision, and the need and impact that we have here in Hardin County. A little bit later on, I think Patty's the one having trouble getting on, but if she's not able to make it on, I'll talk about a little bit what CASA volunteers do, anywhere from gathering information to visiting children, to also making recommendations in a court report that our volunteers write. We're also going to talk about training requirements, and that's going to look a little bit different now that we're impacted by the coronavirus situation. Again, our training is going to move virtual. Usually we have this during daytime and evening, so this will change a little bit as we come up on our spring training class. And then again, we'll have a Q&A session at the end to give you all an opportunity to ask any questions. And since we also have some current volunteers on, I encourage you all to share your experiences as a CASA volunteer as well. Right, so we will talk about what is CASA? What does CASA stand for? So CASA is Court-Appointed Special Advocates. So Court-Appointed Special Advocates are community volunteers who are trained to advocate in the best interests of abused, neglected, and dependent children in the family court system. To give you a little background history of how CASA was created, in 1976, Seattle Court Judge David Sukup, he was concerned about making decisions for abused and neglected children. Most specifically, he was on a case with a three-year-old little girl who was in an abusive situation. And he thought, how am I going to make a decision for this child based on the information I have? And he was concerned about having that sufficient information. So he came up with the idea of appointing community volunteers to make recommendations for children and advocate in their best interest. So he just created a meeting. He invited community members who may be interested to come and talk about how this could be possible. And he was expecting maybe 6 or 7 people to show up during this meeting, and 50 people showed up to this meeting. So he knew that this was going to work. So in 1977, the first Casa Gao program was created in Seattle. About 7 years later, you're going to hear about the National Casa Gao, GAO is Guardian Ad Litem Association, in 1984. So National Casa is made up of over 950 programs across 49 states. And in 2018, almost 272,000 children were served by Casa volunteers throughout the nation. So looking here locally, Casa the Heartland was created in 2007, and we currently serve children in the Hardin County Family Court System. Now, the case starts out in Hardin County, but we do have children who are placed outside of the county, but their cases are in Hardin County. And Casa the Heartland served its first children in 2009. We served 12 children with 10 volunteers, and you'll see a little bit later on that we've really steadily increased that number. Just last year, we served 170 children with 65 active volunteers. So in addition to having a national association, we also have a state organization called the Kentucky Casa Network. The Kentucky Casa Network, we are one of 23 local programs in Kentucky. So we cover about half of the counties in the state. So we're continuing to looking to increase our footprint in Kentucky and also nationally. Because as we'll talk about a little bit later, and especially with the coronavirus situation we're going through now, that the cases of abuse and neglect are going to increase and continue to increase. Looking at our mission, and this is our local mission, Casa the Heartland, we recruit, train, and support community volunteers who advocate on behalf of abused and neglected children under the protection of the Hardin County Family Court System. So in Hardin County, we have 2 family court judges, Judge Pamela Addington and Judge M. Brett Hall. So they usually appoint Casa to the worst cases of abuse, neglect, and trauma children have suffered. So that is how Casa receives cases. The judge decides, they need an extra set of eyes on this child, on their case. And usually, children's cases, they can be one child or they could be multiple children. So when you hear case, just know that it could be one child or multiple children, especially if you finish training and you decide you want to be assigned a case. And the children we serve, they're most often removed from their homes. A lot you'll hear be placed in foster care, but they can also be placed in other homes as well, including fictive kin, which may be a pastor or a teacher, someone close to the child. They can also be placed in relative care. They can be placed in residential facilities, group homes. But with the introduction of the Families First Act that you may have heard of, we are seeing some of our children remain in their parents' homes, and we see the Cabinet for Health and Family Services putting services in the home instead of removing that child, because that's just another trauma that that child has to experience. So most cases, they stay open for an average of 18 months. And during their time in the system, the children we serve may experience multiple changes. This can include multiple social workers, changing foster homes, and they often lack that consistency. So that's what Casa volunteers try to do. They try to serve as that consistent, stable adult in children's lives while they're in the system that's full of uncertainties and change. So to kind of break down our mission a little bit more, a little bit further, starting with the first, recruitment. So Casa continually tries to recruit community members to serve as advocates for these children. And we say this because our wait list is ever fluctuating. I'll talk a little bit more later on about the number of children we currently have on our wait list and the number of volunteers we need to fill that need. So you'll see us at community events. We hold these informational sessions, usually in person, and we usually have one of our family court judges join us. And we can't say enough about our family court judges. Not only are they supportive of us in the courtroom, but also when we hold informational sessions like these. And next, I'm going to talk a little bit about training. We usually hold training 4 times a year. We kind of do it seasonally, so we'll hold one winter, spring, summer, and fall. Of course, again, with coronavirus situation, we're trying to stick with that timeline, but it's going to look a little bit different. I know with some of you all that we may have already met, we usually hold daytime and evening classes over a 2-week period. That's going to be different this upcoming training, and it's going to be held over a 5-week period, so not a lot of turnaround time like we see with the 2 weeks. You'll have more time to actually look over the material, which looks a bit different from the training manual that some of you all may have already. And the third part of our mission is support. I can't stress enough to let you all know that you're not in this alone. You have support. You have support from staff and also some of our current volunteers. Well, I should say all of our volunteers. Know that you won't be doing this alone. Currently, right now, you all heard that I am serving as the interim director, so we are currently looking for a new executive director. So our team is small right now. We have a team of 4, myself, Patty Mayhew, Natasha Mackey, and Robin Terry. And our 3 other staff, they are volunteer advocate coordinators. So they are support staff that you are going to be paired with when you get ready to be assigned to your case. And they will be with you throughout the duration of the case. They'll provide guidance and support. So if you have something come up on your case and you're just not sure what to do, call your support person. And they'll also review your court reports. And we say too, if you just need to vent, feel free to let us know too. We're here for you. And the next part of this is advocate. So what volunteers do, they're assigned to advocate in the child's best interest. And you also make sure they're safe. They have the targeted treatment and services they need to overcome the trauma they've endured, and then they're on the track to reach permanency. So when you think about the services that they need to overcome trauma, we can talk about different ways that our volunteers make a difference. For example, we had a child that wasn't doing very well in one of their subjects. So the volunteer talked with the teacher to see what kind of makeup assignments can we do to make sure that they're back on track where they need to be. And when we talk about a permanent home, that could be reunification with a parent, could be permanent custody with a relative or fictive kin. and it can also mean adoption. So again, when you are assigned a case, we ask that you remain committed to that child until they reach permanency. Okay, and next, our vision is that every child who needs a Casa volunteer has a Casa volunteer. Since Casa was created here in Hardin County, our number of children has always exceeded our current number of volunteers. To fill our current need, we would need 39 more volunteers at this time to fill that need. And I'm sure most of you all have seen on social media or have heard on the news that Kentucky, again, ranks #1 for child abuse. So this is the second year in a row. And also, just looking in Hardin County, we have the highest percentage increase of children in dependency, neglect, and abuse. That's not a great ranking to have, neither is, Kentucky being #1 for abuse. So in looking in just the last 3 years, we've had a 25.2 increase in dependency, neglect, and abuse petitions in Hardin County, and that's just from 2016 to 2019. And I believe it was 2018, we had as many as 831, I believe, petitions, children coming into the system just in Hardin County. Just last year, we had 765 petitions for the dependency, neglect, and abuse. And then we have 87 children who were appointed to Casa by the judge, and those children are currently waiting a volunteer. And these 87 children come from the 39 cases or family groups that I talked about a little bit earlier on. So in looking at these numbers, it's easy to get overwhelmed, and it seems like a daunting task to, have volunteers to take on these kind of cases, because we are appointed to the worst cases of abuse and neglect. So we are so thankful for you all, our current volunteers and people who are interested in serving as volunteers, who are willing to step up and take on these cases and just be the heart and for these children, be that consistent person that they need. So in looking at our local impact, we trained 35 new Casa volunteers last year, and we're hoping to hit that number again this year, even though we're kind of in a difficult situation. We're going to try to continue training as long as we can through virtual means until we're kind of back to normal. And we had 65 active Casa volunteers in 2019. I kind of want to talk about, who are our Casa volunteers? So I will say everybody comes from different walks of life, but I will say one thing that everyone has in common is the heart to serve children. We have one volunteer who was her child's Casa volunteer for over 10 years. That's our longest running case we've ever had. And she recently got to watch her graduate high school. So that talks about the dedication and the compassion our volunteers have for our children. And we also have couples that serve as volunteers together. They serve on a case together. So maybe if your spouse is interested in serving on a child's case, maybe you all can take on training together, take on a case together. That's also an option. And our 65 active Casa volunteers served 170 children in 2019, and that's the most children I think we've ever served in our history. So again, our kids continue to be served by their volunteer until they reach permanency or their case closes by the judge in the court. We do have some instances where the judge will close the case in court and the Cabinet for Health and Family Services will leave it open for a period of time. but in most cases, those cases are closed in court. So now I think Patty has made it on. So I am going to turn it over to her, and she's going to talk about what Casa Volunteers do, and then what training looks like if you're interested in joining our upcoming April training. So let me see if I can unmute her. Hey, Patty, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you put my slide up?
There you go.
There you go. Well, welcome, and we're so glad that you've joined us today on this sort of infomercial, if you want to even call it that. But we really do need folks that have a love for and compassion to volunteer and work with our children. And so our Casa Volunteers are advocates that do things in the best interest for these children. And as Natalie said earlier, some of them may be one child in a home, and then there may be multiple children also in that home. And so they all need that person that's going to speak up and be that voice for them, because that's one area in this whole case that they don't always have someone besides the GAL, that is the attorney for the children, to help represent them. And so this is what this means. First, we see that we learn, and we learn about the child. We learn about the family as much as we can. And we do that in a variety of different ways. We receive the reports that come out of the court system as they go through the process with the judge prior to Casa ever being appointed to a case. They've already been through the process of being found that that there is the point that they need to have a case plan, the parents do, and then that the child has the protection that they need while this case plan is being conducted through the parents. We sometimes refer to that with our kids as kind of homework that parents have to do. And so we first learn as much as we can, and we do that in a variety of ways, as well as the court documents. We meet the social worker, and the social worker is a great avenue for us to learn about what is happening in the case. Sometimes we also learn from the teachers at school. We can learn from the therapists. We can learn with those people that have contact with that child, and all together we can collaborate on those services. Number 2 circle that we see talks about to engage. We need to engage with our kiddos. We want to make sure when we go to meet them in the home that we sit and we have conversations with them. We find out about their interests. We find out about what they enjoy doing. Sometimes we find out about games. We take things with us to engage with that child. We're not there to question them and ask them what went on and how did they feel about that. You know, those things will come up when you engage with the child, whether you might be playing a game. Sometimes taking a book to read to them might lead to a discussion with them that they feel comfortable sharing with you, because they're going to build that relationship with you, sometimes better than ones that they even can develop with their social worker, because a lot of times that worker is changed several times during the case, but you are that one steadfast person that's going to be in their lives. The next thing that you do as you're learning about all of these things, you're going to recommend. You're going to recommend things to the court. You're speaking up for the child. Now, the child may want you to share something they want to do, and we can share that. But we also share with the judge We know how much they want these things, but we also have to think about the best interest of the child. And those conversations can come about and can happen with that child as well as when we are meeting with them and engaging with them. So we have concerns that we have to report in the reports we share with the court. And then the recommendations are the ones that we want to be able to share with the courts. And we do that, like I said, in a form of a report that we provide. Next, we have to collaborate. To do what's in the best interest of the child, you need to have all the people that are involved with that child. They need to be involved too when you're thinking about the things that are going on in their lives and making sure that those things are happening. We're going to be monitoring those situations. We want to make sure they have the services they need. Sometimes those services are within the school. Sometimes they're in with a therapist. Sometimes they may be some other type of therapeutic need the child has, such as speech therapy. Maybe there's some physical therapy needs that the child um, may need to be at least evaluated for, and you can make those recommendations telling why you see that, because one thing that we need to make sure that we can substantiate those things that we are making recommendations or we're telling the courts. And of course, the last thing that the advocate does is they do a report for every opportunity we have in coming to court. We do a report on what we observe, what we have learned, making sure that those things that are going on within the case are happening. If we've recommended and the judge has ordered for the child to have therapy once a week, we want to make sure that that therapy is happening. We don't assume it's happening. We want to verify that it's happening. So when we make those reports, we have all of that information we've collected and that we can share with the courts. Those reports are shared with our judge, they're shared with the GAL, they're shared with our Commonwealth attorney. They're shared with the parents' attorneys that are within the case as well. Anyone that's involved directly within that case and the social workers get a copy of that report. So those are the things that a CASA advocate does. Plus, sometimes there are other situations, and there might be many more things that kind of come up just in your particular situation. So that is, I think, Natalie, what a volunteer does. So we probably want to move on next, talking about, well, how can I learn to do these things? You know, how do you expect me to be able to do all of those things that you've just gone through and not have some support? Well, this is how we give you that support. We have training requirements. You must be at least 21 years of age. And then as 21 years of age, we will meet with you. And in this respect, after we have these informational meetings and you're interested, which Natalie will talk about a little more at the end, how you make that contact, we're going to do an interview, at least during this period of time, via a telephone or maybe a Skype, whatever is convenient with you. And during that interview, we have a packet of information that we're going to email to you. Now, I will tell you, it's quite extensive, because for you being able to work with our children, we have to make sure that you understand the different things that we require to keep that child safe and to keep the confidentiality of that child in the case confined. Talks about all different kinds of situations, from confidentiality to social posting to any kind of discussions with the child, but also there's background checks that are extremely important. And we must do a background check. We actually have two we run that you are going to be required to make a copy of your driver's license, which will be sent in with one of our background checks. And then we will forward those on to the appropriate individuals, and we get that information back to make sure that you can proceed on in this process. The other thing, besides completing all of the other information in that packet, and that packet is, like I said, is very extensive. It's going to ask some thank you. I thought I just went muted again. It's going to ask that you will give us a little biography about yourself. So there are several different things that are going to be asked of you as you complete this packet. And then the 3 references are going to be asked for 3 non-family members for you to have completed and sent back to us. Now, in this packet, there'll be 1 copy, but we ask that either you make copies and give them to individuals and they will mail them to us, or they could scan them and email them to us, or they can directly take that information sheet and fill it out online, and then they can mail it, they can email it back to us as well at our Casa staff email. So those are going to be necessary things within that packet that we get back. It's going to be essential that we get first that background packet, that we can run the background checks back first, because it takes just a little time to get those. So we ask that you do that immediately when you get the packet. Don't wait till it's all completed to send back. Send those back to us first, and then go on and get those reference sheets to your individuals and get them to complete them for you. Next, you're going to see that it talks about 30 hours of service training. When we met with a group in our office there to do training, we had 8 different sessions and 3 hours for each session, plus some of the pre-work that they had to do prior to coming to class, which would total up to 30 hours, and some may go a little bit over, depending on how much time they spent on their own at home doing some of the pre-work. This is a little different. We have 5 sessions that are taught, and in each session, it's approximately 6 hours of work. There's 2 different types of sessions that we could utilize. One of them, and they're both 5 weeks, let me tell you, well, one of them is called guided learning. And in the guided learning, you will have like the first 4 days of a week to go through and do your work there at home. You will have things on the internet that you will look up and that you will work with, as well as within yourself, doing some of the individual items that they ask you to do prior to when we will be meeting with you virtually, just kind of like this Zoom meeting. And that will take about 2 hours that we would meet. And we are looking to do that like on a Thursday. So you will have those 4 days to complete that learning. And that will go on for a total of 5 weeks. It will begin on April the 20th is what our plan is as of right now, just as our training for in-class was going to begin. Then if we have more than 5 people, we will apply to National CASA. And when we do that, we will do a training called Flex training. It's handled just a little bit differently. There are some times specific for each lesson. There are 3 different times that are offered to receive that lesson during the week. And you would have to sign in and do the 3-hour session online with them. And then again on that Thursday, we would do a virtual learning with us right here locally, with one of us as a leader. And then we would fill in the other 3 hours, which would be a total of 6 hours. And we would do that for 5 weeks. So that again will total up to the 30 hours of pre-service learning. It's a new thing for all of us, for you and for us. So you can bear with us, but one of the things is that the training that we have continually been doing here is going to be condensed into those 5 different sessions. And in those sessions, you'll also learn about writing those court reports, because they have at least 5 different reports that we will be utilizing during the training. And they talk about 5 different aspects of things that can come up during some of our court reporting, with several maybe extra uh, maybe some difficulties that some of the children face, just as Natalie said earlier. If there's something happening in school and we need to go as an advocate and advocate for that child in school, if it happens to be with a therapist, wherever that is, that we will talk about those also in those reports that we will be reviewing in your training. The next thing that would happen if we were doing our training as we have in the past is we would do court observations. Now, if by the time we finished these several weeks of training, the courts were opened back up, we would have that opportunity then of possibly going in and doing the court observations with our family court judges. We have 2 judges. One of them does morning court, Judge Addington, and she meets in the mornings from 8:15 till 1 o'clock. And at 1 o'clock, our second court judge, Judge Hall, comes on the bench, and then he will carry on with afternoon court. So we have 2 family divisions of court. And you can imagine, with the number of cases that Natalie referred to at the beginning of this training today, or this information for you today. So hopefully we may be at a point where we could go in and do those observations in family court. If that occurs, the first thing that will be done in that family court is you will be sworn in as an advocate. And when you're sworn in, Judge Addington usually swears in our advocates first thing before the court even begins. So that will have to occur. And you would have to be sworn in for us to be able to share some of the court cases that we already have, for you to be looking at and determining if you think that this would fit you as a case that you would like to represent and the children you would like to represent. And so then the next thing that we would do, if all of that were to occur, is we would be able to go on and assign you those cases. If something were to happen and we are not able to swear in and do those observations just yet, there are some things that we can go on and let you be aware of and let you participate with us along with the other advocates, such as we have our own private email that keeps things confidential within CASA, that only you will have the password and the ability to use during your time as an advocate. You are not to share that password with anyone else in your house, with your family, because of the confidentiality of that. But we also send you notifications of things that are going on within our program. And so you can check that email. You'll also receive our email that is put together each month as a newsletter. And it offers several different things for you to read about and become acquainted with. You'll be able to join our national CASA and receive emails from them, as well as the state CASA. And also within that newsletter, there are links to sign up for some other various things. As a CASA, even though you're taking this training, it's training, but you're still required to have 12 hours of in-service every year. And within that email newsletter, it has a way that you can log on to different webinars right from your own home and review those and get your training we're encouraging some of our advocates that are in their homes right now, in between the four walls, to be getting some of that training going right now. So I hope that that you will take advantage of the different things that are offered to you during that time as well. So, Natalie, can you think of anything else that I need to add there?
I think you covered it pretty well. Again, Patty was saying we'd like to start April 20th. That was our original start date for our in-class training. So we're hoping to try to stick with that, especially with those who are already planning to attend training for the spring session.
Right. I have been asked, and I apologize for the beeping on the phone, but one of the questions, a couple that have come up, so we've had a couple that have had trouble getting on this morning or this afternoon for our informational meeting, and they ask about this being recorded and if it would be provided at a different time.
Yes, we are currently recording the session. So I'm hoping to have this up on our website and our social media by the end of this week. And if it would be helpful to everyone, I can also send a link out to access that video to everyone who registered today.
I think that that might be a good idea. There seemed to be a little trouble getting on with the code that they had, and it was not allowing them. It was telling them it was the wrong code. And I apologize, but that's one of the reasons I was getting into. It was not allowing me to use that to get in.
Yes, thanks for bringing that up, Patty.
It's a new thing for us.
Yeah. And with Zoom security,
yes,
things going on, they changed it kind of in the middle of when we originally sent it out and when I sent an update. So I do apologize to those who, didn't have that password. But I'm hoping with this being recorded, you can go back and view the portions that you missed. All right. Well, thank you, Patty. We will go on and start the Q&A session. So we're a little bit past 1:45, but we're here as long as you need us. So again, if you'd like to ask a question, please feel free to use the chat box. But if you would like to use your microphone, yeah, I think I've got one here. Let's see. All right, I think somebody had raised their hand. So I have unmuted the person that has Galaxy S9.
That was me, Nasha.
Hi, Nasha.
Hey, Natalie. So my question is, I turned in my background information. I did my 3 references. I still had that packet that I was going to turn in, I guess actually today, since we were supposed to have a regular in-person meeting. So if I email that in, is it too late to go ahead and sign up for the April 20th courses, since I obviously won't be going out of town anywhere?
That's a good question. No, it's not too late. We are trying to kind of finalize how many people we expect for the April 20th start date. So feel free to email that on. I will put up our CASA staff email, but no, it's not too late. So if you'd like to enter into the spring class, that is fine with us.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I got another hand raised. Let's see, I think it was Joanne.
Yes, hi. Hello, everyone. My name is Joanne. Sorry. You have to move. I have a question. I would like to receive a packet. And also, on Thursday, what time will the classes be? Will we meet for the classes?
Okay. Patty, would you like to answer that?
Sure. The classes on Thursday, we had kind of tossed around looking at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because they're going to be anywhere from 2 to 3 hours, depending on if we do the flex class or if we do the guided learning class. One of the things we did talk about that we might ask after we know what the group is that we're going to have, what would be most beneficial for them, because I think I'm going to be the one that's going to be kind of working and utilizing that. So I am open to doing it whenever you individuals that are going to participate would like to do it on that Thursday, and what works the best for all of us. Remembering how long of a period of time we're going to need to be on there together, and we're going to have to kind of do the best we can to kind of work that out.
Okay, that sounds good. Natalie, I would, as I stated before, I would like to receive a packet, please, so I can start my process.
Okay, Joanne, we'll be sure to send that to you today. All right. Does anyone else have any questions? Feel free to raise your hand and I'll unmute you, or you can use the chat box. All right. We have one in the chat box from Nasha, I believe. She says, I might have missed information about the Thursday class. Is it separate from the 3-week everyday course? So this will be a 5-week course since we're doing it virtually. Patty, would you like to talk about the Thursday class? That's when you and the volunteers will be meeting over Zoom.
Right. What happens with that is that the first part of the class is going to be provided to you. And like I said, this is new for all of us. The flex training, there will be designated times. For example, it might happen from 9 o'clock in the morning to noon, and on one day, and then it'll be offered again at 2 other times in case you couldn't log in at one specific time. And you'll get that 3 hours of training. And then we will do a training together for the other part of that 3 hours, which is a total of 6 hours. But we'll work together in our class with us. We'll discuss the cases. We'll discuss just like we would do if we were sitting around the table in our office receiving the training. And so then we'll work through the things that you have had the experience of receiving earlier in the week during that 3-hour period. Then the Thursday class will be with our class, our personal class, our personal volunteers. So that would be the time you could ask questions. If you didn't understand something, we'll go in a little more in depth about what went on during that training. We'll talk about the casework that was discussed during that training, because each of the cases are designed to hit certain criteria that we want to make sure that our advocates have had exposure to. Some may understand it extremely well. Some of you may even have had some experiences yourself. And, you know, it's so beneficial to have people with such variety of backgrounds in these classes that you wouldn't believe how resourceful it is to learn about each other. And we will do that on those Thursday classes as well. So it's an extremely beneficial time for us to be together since we can't physically be together. But yes, so you will have training with 3 hours with your computer guided or flex that you will do. And then Thursday we will come together and do the virtual training with our class here with Casa of the Heartland together. And we will carry that out. And that will be on Thursday. for 5 weeks.
Thank you, Patty.
Does that answer the question?
Yes, I believe so. Mhm.
I hope so.
Right. Does
We're
anyone
praying. I'm praying hard about this because I'm hoping it'll all come together. But so, as a former school teacher, I feel like I'm going to be one of those teachers, you know, doing Zoom like some of our teachers are doing now out in the counties. It's going to be very interesting.
And Nasha said, yes, you did. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I'm excited about this, and I'm excited that it might teach us and open up other opportunities for us to be able to service more folks in our community in this manner too. So who knows?
Okay. Well, does anyone have any other questions about the CASA role in general or training? If not, I don't want to hold you all too long. So we want to thank you all, especially during this crazy time we're living in, for joining us today. If you have not received an application packet yet, please email us at this casastaff@casaheartland.org. Most likely I have most of your emails, but if not, shoot an email to this email address and I'll be sure to make sure you get one of those application packets so we can get you signed up for training. You can also follow us on some of our social media pages just to see what we're up to. Not a whole lot going on now other than training, getting ready for training. But feel free to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and our YouTube page. We post a lot of videos, especially with our volunteers. We have volunteer interview videos that you can check out. So for your application packets, it may be quicker to go ahead and get you set up if you email them back to us. But if you prefer to mail them, I have our mailing address here on this slide. So I'll keep it up here for a couple of seconds so you all can write that down. But again, thank you all for joining us. If you have any questions that we didn't get to today, feel free again to send it to that email. All right. Well, thank you all again for joining us, and I hope you all have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Natalie. Bye.
And bye, Judy. Thank you all.
Good job, Natalie.
Oh, thank you. Good job, Patty.
Have
Hello,
a good day, guys.
everyone.
Hello.
Bye.
Hi.
Hey, Miss Patty.
I couldn't see everybody on there. I'm glad to have you all here with us.
Oh, this is Andra. I had signed up. I enjoyed it again.
Great. Hi, Darlene.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us and being here as our support today. We appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. You all did a great job for us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Natalie.
Thanks, Patty. I think I'm going to go ahead and
Go ahead.
turn it off here.